Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to talk to you again. I wanted to remind you of some issues that we have in the district. That's why I'm here tonight. In my opinion, education of our children relies on three key components. That's the curriculum, the educators and the staff, and the facilities. Now, you guys have knocked it out of the park on the facilities, so kudos to all of you for doing that. So I'm not here to complain about facilities. But what I'm worried about is that great facilities do not eliminate or mask deficiencies that we have in these other areas. So as you may remember 6 months ago when I was standing in front of you, I have serious concerns about the educational programs in our schools, especially around music education. Now I fear that these failings are having repercussions in the third area, and that's on our teachers. So let me explain. We are significantly understaffed in music, especially at the high school. The Band-Aid solution was to hire a part-time retiree to help with band and lessons, and Mr. Becker was exceptional. But his tenure, his stepping in to help out ends in just a couple weeks, early March. And we find ourselves in the exact same situation as we were before, lacking adequate support for current teachers and the inability to offer the best music education possible to students. We treated a symptom for one semester, but the underlying ailment remains. Coincidentally, we were also promised additional support for the choral program, but to my knowledge, that promise has gone unfulfilled. I understand that the district has tried to hire a new music educator for the intermediate school, hopefully to free up valuable resources to redeploy at the high school. But that position goes unfilled, and I worry that a lack of urgency and a clear unwillingness to interview qualified candidates is a sign that the administration is not taking this serious. I also understand that hiring is extremely difficult right now, but the way we conduct searches, screen applicants, and follow through on the hiring process is causing further damage. If the situation with the music program is at all representative of how we address other hiring in the district, there's no way any good qualified candidates will want to work in this district. That would be disastrous. So I'm here today as a concerned parent with the view that the situation is getting worse, not better. I implore the board to educate yourselves on the reality of these issues and set a course for rapid and focused resolution before it's too late. I also remind you that whatever my role is, whether it's concerned parent, taxpayer, voter, future board member, whatever it may be, I will speak up on behalf of the students and the educators of this district. And it's not just about band. I've been here twice about band, but if the same thing happened with psychology or chemistry, or even the athletics program, I'll be here raising those concerns. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Douglas, I just want to check, is our stream going?
Is the stream going? There is some technical difficulties, Ian's saying.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So we'll be able to post it.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Brandon Johnson, and I reside at 11 Woodside Drive in Big Flats. I'm a social studies teacher at the middle school and the treasurer of the Horseheads Teachers Association. Most importantly, I'm the father of a 9th grader and a 6th grader in the district. It is on behalf of them and all students that I speak tonight. Over the course of the past few years, our district facilities have begun a fantastic physical change. When these capital projects are completed, I wholeheartedly believe that our district will have some of the best facilities in the region. They are a great way to showcase our Horseheads brand to the community and to prospective parents looking for a place to settle in the region. But facilities are just a portion of the Horseheads brand. Upgraded facilities and athletic sites are the hook that will bring people to Horseheads. But to keep them here, we need to renew our commitment to having the best academic and extracurricular opportunities in the region. As we slowly but surely emerge from this pandemic, it is time for our district to redouble our efforts and meet the mission, vision, and goals that were developed by the Horseheads 2030 Committee, which I was a proud member of. We need to give our students the chance to explore many various interests through increased staffing of music, art, language, technology, business, and family and consumer science classes, as well as ensuring students have access to all classes offered in the course selection guide at the high school to fully prepare them for any and all fields they may wish to pursue. We need to empower our students by giving our highest achievers greater access to ACE and AP classes and to push their critical thinking and higher order thinking skills, as well as providing sorely needed remediation and social emotional support to all of our K-12 students who have struggled through the pandemic and need a helping hand to achieve their goals and ambitions. Finally, our students will excel at life beyond their education at Horseheads if we commit to giving them the tools, resources, and support that they need, whether it's in the classroom, on the field, on the stage, or in the community. By putting our students first and committing to excellence, the Horseheads brand will be more than the H on our fields and our signs. It will be stamped on the hearts of the first-class citizens who leave our hallways for the wider world. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Bill Finnerty, and I currently serve as the president of the Horseheads Teachers Association, and I'm here to speak out of concern for the students of the Horseheads Central School District who are currently dealing with detrimental consequences due to COVID-19 setbacks and policies. I think we can all agree that open and honest dialogue between all stakeholders, students, teachers, administrators, and the board is vital if we want to address those setbacks and help our students get back on track as things open up just a little bit. In mid-March 2020, students were sent home and schools were closed due to the outbreak of the coronavirus. At that time, no one could have expected that we would not return to our buildings until the fall, and that when we did, it would be without students. When students finally started to return, it was only part-time, and they had to try to figure out how to adapt to learning in multiple settings with all the distractions that came with hybrid instruction. Now, nearly 2 years later, we as educators have been trying to promote a sense of normalcy in our classes and schools, when the educational experience of our kids has been anything but. For example, students at the high school have not been required to sit for a Regents exam since December of 2019. Some students in our elementary systems have not had the opportunity to learn and master skills that they were working on in classes that they were sitting in at the beginning of the pandemic, yet have been transferred up through the grades. There have been little opportunity to offer these students remedial services for reasons ranging from need to social distance to construction limiting space to lack of teachers and staff to provide such support. The state educational system has waived policies like attendance and seat time requirements in order to keep the process running smoothly and avoid overcrowding in grades by holding students back due to gaps in their learning and lack of mastery. We as educators work hard every day to help our students to be successful in overcoming the gaps resulting from the situation caused by the global pandemic and the educational challenge that came with it. But there are not enough hours in the day to do so successfully. As we measure our own success by the success of our students, we feel as though we are letting them down, despite our best and at times Herculean effort, often to the detriment of our own physical, emotional, and mental health. All of us will continue, of course, to keep at it, giving the best we have for our students. That's what we do. What we ask is that all of us, teachers, administrators, and board members, work together to address the very real problems facing our students as they struggle to make up ground they've lost over the past 2 years, which were anything but normal. We need to first acknowledge that these times are not normal. The state of education is not normal. Business as usual is not enough for our kids. We ask that a real effort be made to provide the remediation and other opportunities that our kids need and deserve. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I can just interject real quick, Bill, did you look at my State of the Schools address?
No, I didn't.
Because you pretty much covered a lot of things that we're going to say, but I still will have to go through it, but thank you.
Good evening, members of the board, Dr. Douglas, and members of the community. My name is Dora Leland, and I am a middle school history teacher and vice president of the Horseheads Teachers Association. And on behalf of the members of the Horseheads Teachers Association, I would like to take a moment to share with you some of the challenges that our students and our staff have been facing over the past year. So we came into the 2021-22 school year with optimism and hope that the worst was behind us. We had all been through some of the most difficult years in education, and we're incredibly optimistic for a return to normal, a return to do what we do best, which is educate children. Well, as the year progressed, it became apparent that nothing about this year has been normal, and if anything, it has been more difficult than the past 2 years. Let me make this very clear. Every single educator wants to return to the pre-pandemic teaching. Every educator wants to provide the best possible educational experience for our students. But what we've been doing is exhausting. We are preparing and engaging and meaningful instruction for our students in class while simultaneously trying to connect both academically and emotionally with our homebound students. The task of keeping up with the continuous flux of students returning from quarantine and those leaving has been all but impossible. We feel like we can't keep our heads above water. We are responsible not only for the standards that we have in our classroom for this year, but we are also responsible for all the lost learning over the past 18 months. We simply can't keep up. The students we have in class are struggling. The last normal year they've had was 2 years ago. And we see their increased anxiety and frustration and uncertainty, and it is heartbreaking. We are doing the best we can for all of our students, but we need help. I speak for educators when I say we have never worked harder. We are providing social and emotional support, not just for our students, but for the parents as well, all while dealing with our own worries and stress. I have walked out of my classroom many times at 5 p.m. and seen my colleagues still working at their desks, answering emails, cleaning their classrooms for the following day. The staff shortage has had an impact on us all. Our members are working late nights, weekends, and holidays just to keep up with the impossible demands. I've sat with far too many members who are at their breaking point because teaching during these uncertain times is unbearable. Now, it's tempting to say that these situations are burnout, but that's not it. Burnout would suggest that the problem lies with us, that we somehow have control. It's not that we can't hack it in the classroom. Instead, we feel demoralized, discouraged and overwhelmed because we care deeply about our students and our profession, but we realize that conditions right now make it impossible for us to do what is right, what is good, and what is just. This has caused many to consider leaving the profession. Yet despite all this, Horsehead's educators have continued to provide in so many ways for our students and families. They have continued to go above and beyond, often at the cost of our own wellness. We are doing the best we can during what we had hoped to think was a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic. But we cannot continue to, as the saying goes, pour from an empty cup. We need help in the form of additional time to plan for and connect with our students who are struggling to make up for nearly 2 years of disrupted education. We need help in the form of resources and staff, and we need the burdens and demands placed on us to be lightened.
Dora,
we need help in the form of grace and understanding that this is not easy for any of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other community members that would like to make a comment? Okay. For those of you that did come tonight, thank you very much. We appreciate everything that you had to say, and it's really nice to hear from community members, and we do take your concerns and your comments very seriously. So thank you very much. So we'll transition to our superintendent report, which will be the state of our schools.
If everybody will be putting it up here. Test. Just 1 second while we load that, and then we'll also load our budget presentation. I know, I mean. Oh, thank you very much, Ms. Bearzo. Ms. Parazzolo will be our clicker today, so please forgive us. Ladies and gentlemen, every year at the start of budget time, this is one of the hardest times, but it's also a different and challenging time, just like you've heard from some of our speakers. But we try to give the state of the schools, and for some of the speakers, absolutely. Facilities are on their way. We certainly understand that. But as we go through that, that will be part of it. But there's a lot more than just the facilities and some of the commitments that hopefully as we sort of travel through this little journey down the road, click, we're going to sort of talk about where we've been, where we are, and where we are going. Each year we sort of look at that, but we've got to try to also understand that where we were and where we're going certainly got a roadblock along the way. So as we go through this, see Bill, nearly 2 years ago gone since New York, everybody knows March 16th was a horrible day in 2020 because unfortunately at that point the whole world was caught off guard, especially schools in New York State. And because of that, we've been dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. We were sort of going off. You can go to the next slide, please. The background is a tunnel. There's no end in sight. We didn't know at the time what we were going through. But really, March 16th to June 20th, Gardner Road sign says it very good. We're going to remote, COVID-19 pandemic. Our hallways basically went dark. Our cafeterias went dark. And we looked like we were going into that tunnel with no clear direction or map forward yet. But I have to say, our board, our staff, our families tried to adjust the best they could. They tried to adjust as quickly and swiftly as they could, especially when we're in a situation where not all the technological infrastructure was there. By doing so, we ended up that year with kids shuttered. We always knew there was going to be some type of learning loss, but we also knew that we can't just bring the students back and say, going forward, you're going to make up all that time real quick. And partnerships with the HTA, our HSSA, our community, we know that this is not a 1-year fix or 2-year fix, probably a 3 or 4-year fix at the elementary levels, but our high school, they don't have time. They have to move forward as they go through because of the way that the grading structure is. So we do place a lot on our instructional staff, but we also place this emphasis. We do as much as we can, the best we can. And I know, sort of like what Dora said, they wear it on their sleeves. Everybody does. And that's absolutely the God-honest truth. And unfortunately, all we can do is say, don't take it to heart, and it's hard for a teacher and a support staff in education not to take it to heart. But you're doing the best you can, and that's what the expectation is, I think, by our community, our students. And sometimes we have to remind our staff that just because of the fact I know they want to do so much more. So as we go from there, where have we been? Well, sort of like what Bill said. September 2020, we started doing, the intent was hybrid instruction. And we all know that we had one of the major outbreaks in the area. We started with certain mitigations and protocols that some are still in place and some have moved on. But if you notice, we were in school for a little bit until about October 6th, and we had a staffing concern because we had so many illnesses at the point. And right when we were ready to come back out of it and continue on, we ended up being closed by then Governor Cuomo. And he would not change the metric until the next segment, because we were all remote, January to June 21st. And about that same time last year, this year, you can feel the stresses and the stressors kicking in. We started opening up. We had more kids in, but they were only in 2 days out of the week. Then we tried to get it to 2 to 3. Each time, we were moving forward in this tunnel, but we didn't really know how long it was. We had kids coming back for lunch. We had to figure that out. We had spacing. We had maintenance individuals that were trying to figure out, as well as teachers, how to keep kids as productively moving forward as best we can within our education, and also keeping them, the community, and their families safe. Once we got through June, we had that summer, and we were hoping that they wouldn't do it to us again. We weren't sure, but the big thing, and it is different. It doesn't mean it's easier just because the kids are back, but they were back 5 full days a week. And I'm happy to report, the district's happy to report that we've done everything, teachers, maintenance, community, to keep it that way. And our kids are benefiting, even though they won't benefit like they would during a normal year. But everybody's trying to do their best. And unfortunately, the state gives us the parameters, and we have to work through that the best we can. So we started off, but here you can see different things. The biggest thing our staff, our building administration, and I know our community wanted, as much of a return to normalcy as you could possibly do, given all the restrictions. We never thought we'd be able to have outdoor crowds without masks. But what happens is, we weren't sure about inside too. But you can see vibrant displays of engagement in education. Is it exactly where every teacher wants it to be? No. Can they do everything they did when you have to deal with quarantines, direct contacts, 10 days, 5 days? That is the difference before. The big thing is we made a commitment for our teaching staff not to be with dual instruction. And we did that in partnership, and we talked about it at the board because that was important. How can a teacher work 2 different educational platforms and try to address both? What did help, unfortunately, is the quarantines hurt, but test to stay eventually assisted. We've been doing that, and I've got to commend everybody that's been participating, the families and so forth, because they've tried to get kids in school. And as they go through, you see from the elementary, we've done our musicals, we've done our chorus, we've done our band, and we're trying to keep moving that best foot forward for all. The hard part is we've been inside and outside. Masking rules, play a game. It's hard because we're under a different set of circumstances, whether we like it or not. Inside we're under one, outside we're under one. Right now, when you're out in the public, you're under one rule, but when you're in schools, you're in another. I do believe people understand when you're in a hospital or medical setting, especially right now. But those are the trials and tribulations that all of our staff, including our administration, our board, has had to deal with, and I think they've expressed all of their gratefulness to our community, to our students, to our staff for all their perseverance, and we do what we can. That's the best we can do right now. But we do have stresses, and we do have to work through those. As we go from here, where we are, well, obviously, Horseheads 2030 is in full construction mode. It's hoping to wrap up by the end of the summer. However, we believe it will wrap up more like November, December. Everything affects what we're doing. Shipping, material supplies, and we've seen it here too. You've seen some things. This is the middle school cafeteria, which was supposed to come online. I think it was, where's Mr. Cochran? December. One door is holding us up because of codes. We're getting closer and closer. It looks much better now. You're starting to see some finishes if you go to the next. You're seeing the new entryway. You're seeing classrooms and guidance suites. You're seeing the front entryway. And we're also trying to bring in the branding, because the branding's important, because it helps to do exactly what we said. Talk about that ideal of the Horseheads 2030, how do we relate, and how do future generations. So I thank you, Brandon, for bringing that up. In addition, you've seen some of it. If you haven't, we've done open houses, but our library, our cafeteria, our spaces, the classroom up there, we've tried to say, if you build it, they will come. We have been seeing that our enrollment hasn't necessarily been declining like others at this point. We are down from last year right now, roughly about 17 students. And we still have a large percentage of students in homeschool or in private schools because of the pandemic that we expect will probably return. That's a good thing. But a lot of it is because of all the hard work. I know Sue regularly gives a tour and people are coming in. Our science rooms, our classrooms. This is not just about the high school. Now the community, we are going to be looking over the time for our elementaries and our middle school. And the commitment that this board has made and this community has made, not just with simple approvals, but with supermajority approvals to move everything better, and they also know we have to work on the education piece. As we go through, where are we educationally? I'm going to turn this over right now to my assistant superintendent. Please forgive him. He had a little skiing issue, so he won't move as freely as me.
Thank you, Dr. Douglas. I'm going to have to go over here and lean against something. I can work this too. Thank you. There was a first part of this, Tom, if you wanted to speak to the, I could throw the mic back at you briefly.
Technical difficulties. It's sort of like, Bill, come on up and give the speech again. But where are we? There's a lot of things. I won't go into great detail on COVID pandemic. We all know that. We've been living it. Nobody likes having to do what we have to do in schools. But a lot of people understand why we have to, and some people don't. And we understand that too. The hard part is we have to be everything to everybody as equivalently as we can under the law. Masking, testing has helped. I think one of the things is when we started, we did not have a lot of testing. I think right now we've got so much testing going on, but I don't think that's representative in what's actually going on out in the public, because we know as a school we've given over 10,000 tests. People have been using them more for their own courtesy and common understanding, and that's what they're there for. But they don't necessarily all get reported. Otherwise, I think our positivity rate in the area would be down much further. And we are heading in a substantially right direction now. If you watch our data online, our COVID data, our information is over 2 years. We can tell where the wave is and where it goes down. We can see it coming, what's going to happen, about the time frame. And if they left that information to us, I could give that information to the board, or if they gave us metrics, we would be able to address it. We are waiting for that, and I think that's either coming or it should be coming. Contact tracing has sort of diminished at this point, which has allowed more kids in school, which hopefully will take off some of the stresses in the classroom. It doesn't remove them, because no matter what, it's a time delay. If the kids are there, it's going to take longer, but we tried to differentiate that instruction, and who better than the teachers from Horseheads. In addition, we have organizational concerns. You've heard some, so I won't go into them, but school environment, status, stressors, time. Unfortunately, we do not have a limited time. When we have the students, we are here. I can't just take extra days off. I would never say it, but as a superintendent, I never expected to call a rain day for a snow day. But I know hopefully that gave people a little breather. The hard part is we wish we could give everything to everybody, but we just can't. But we do listen, we do implement. We have regular labor management meetings, and these issues are regularly brought up there, and we expect them to be brought up there. And that's the way we work together. Community environment, same thing. Just like in-house, we have our stressors. You saw some of it tonight. Our community has their stressors too, and they're not wrong. They have their own situations. We never understand the perspective that everybody comes from. I would ask everybody in the public, everybody watching, who wants to be me right now? Who wants to be a board member right now? Being threatened to be sued when you're doing what the law says. Stressors go across everything, just like we have parents. We have, unfortunately, some family members that have lost people during this, and we don't even know it all. But everybody has that stress, and we're all trying to figure out, and we try. I know if one of my teachers, one of my counselors hears about it, we try to take care of the family as best and swiftly as possible. One of our colleagues does it, we try to do that. My administration, this board has, and this community has, and that's why we're in Horseheads. In additional educational impacts, we've already said, there's impacts. How we handle them, that's the differentiation instruction, how we work together, how we try to develop some of those supports, like in the TAs that we placed in last year, to try to assist to give more time. But unfortunately, COVID gets in the way of that. In addition, hiring people gets in the way of that. There's not as many people that are out there that want to do this work, because this work is hard. It's sometimes thankless. But when you see that child down the road, I don't know a single teacher that doesn't beam with pride inside when they know what that child was able to do because they had the presence to be with them. That's what Horseheads is about. Financial hurdles, there's going to be. Remember, last year we were going to lose 20% of our aid. Now supposedly we got money coming all over the place. We don't. It's one-time money. Other districts in the area have 5, 6, 7 times the amount of money, and it's one-time money. But in state aid, they also have sometimes 10, 15% more from the state. We are an affluent district, and unfortunately, we have to make decisions, and you'll see some of that tonight with Ms. Bizzetti's development with our budget. And it's not just her development, it's all of us, so I don't want to throw you there. But the hard part is there's limited resources. And our community has been very good because our tax rate in my time here has been doing nothing but either going up a little bit or going down, but over the time between the administrative leadership and the board's leadership, our tax rate is lower than what it was 7 years ago. And we're hoping that those projections are there even while we are doing the construction and trying to develop the best financial plan. The only other way to get more finances is to challenge the tax cap. And that's kind of hard to do when people are going through pandemic-related issues. It's even hard to do on a regular place. But those are the decisions sometimes the boards have to make. And right now, you can tell we've been able to manage ours and be beneficial for our community. So financial hurdles, technology hurdles, medical hurdles, staffing hurdles, contract hurdles. Believe me, look at, we got inflation going through the roof. There's not a single board member that doesn't understand that. But unfortunately, we have a finite amount of resources, and we will try to use them to the best of the ability, and I think this board has as well. So as we go, there are some of the things where we are. There will also be some of the things of where we're going. So I'll come back to that right now. Back.
Thank you. I'm just going to give a little bit of where we've been and kind of the overlying work of our teams during the last couple of years. Part of the 2030 work was to emerge with a vision statement and a mission to achieve that vision. And key to that was to incorporate what's called Portrait of Graduate. We had multiple inputs on this. It's talking about the gap that we have between our walls to what's next for that student. What skills and knowledge should we set them forth on? And not all skills and knowledge is developed in our standard curriculums. You know, there are many times New York State requirements that say you must cover this and have these skill sets. Students must learn these, but more importantly, there are these other skills that we talk about in culture and what's expected outside these walls that we want to make sure is part of our layered curriculum, and as we get deeper into that work. So the Portrait of a Graduate is just that, and that's being finalized. I really look forward to sharing that with the board very soon, and the work of many teams and how all those inputs came together from students to parents and staff members, administrators, and the board a couple of years ago. And so look for that coming forward, and that's like where we're heading. That's the academic piece. It's a part of our mission statement, that exploring and how we achieve that vision statement. All the while, we've been ongoing with our ELA curricular work. You'll recall, it seems like a lifetime ago, changes in the ELA standards by New York State and the new assessment date. As been mentioned earlier, assessments have been altered or changed or canceled over the last couple of years. So that standard, that new assessment that's supposed to come based on those new standards has also been kicked down the road. But we still focus on making those shifts. You'll recall from previous board presentations a focus on early learning interventions, phonics, the science of reading, language comprehension, really approaching our elementary levels at K through 6 work, so that when we get to the higher levels, there's less remediation AIS needs if we can catch students. We all know some stats about when a student can read at grade level by a certain the trajectory of their life and their abilities and what they're going to go on to do in graduation. We also see this continuum of services in our special ed, K through 6, and our RTI programming. It's really being, it's a shift that's been the last couple of years on identifying what it looks like for the different intervention levels, and it's going to play in even further as we go in a moment when I talk about MTSS. We've had some math curricular work that's been ongoing, foundational models. You recall coming to the board a couple meetings ago about math models identification with Greg Tang and some of the work that we're doing there. Also, the alignment of these standards, pre-K through algebra, vertical conversations to say, it's great conversation to see teachers working with our administrators talking about what it is that a algebra student needs to accomplish in their exam for that Regents, and what strand that is that it might look like as an essential, even in a pre-K class. And it's just tremendous learning from everybody as we look at a vertical alignment of our math coursework. Music had some work this past summer, ongoing with the general music and starting the band and the orchestra. And then this multi-tiered system of supports. MTSS includes social emotional learning standards. When we onboarded the social workers and the social work assistants, some of the work that they do during the summer is to go through that standards work much like a teacher would go through their standards to determine what are these performance indicators, what do they look like, how do we go push into classrooms to push this learning and to get students learning about the emotional standards. It's a requirement, but it's also good practice. And this is work that started prior to COVID, and it set us up fairly well having some of those supports in place as the pandemic has ensued. We've tried to build some capacity in this learning, especially amongst our instructional leaders groups, and we intend to move forward with some of that work with the help of our the social workers and moving with our well, it's a lot of related services in general, and then working with our administrative team and teachers in the future on what that MTSS looks like. Essentially, it's your targeted approach, from a universal approach to a more targeted to a very intense instruction was referred to earlier. When you get to that middle one, that targeted intervention, what does that look like? And it goes beyond just academics, which is a change and a shift in thought process. It goes to social, emotional, and behavioral as well. So that's what multi-tier is referring to. It's in the idea of supports beyond just academics, but across the board. All this work has sort of been done with the understanding, as I've mentioned to the board before, of capacity. You know, we had to be very aware. Tom just, went through everything that as a system and as in our personal lives that occurred. The stressors here at work and at both his home, as everybody's gone through this pandemic. And we have to have a very clear understanding of what can people handle. How do we keep these things afloat? How do we not lose the steam of that 2030 work, and how do we continue moving forward in a positive way, effectively and efficiently? Because if it's not effective, then it's going to lose ground. People are like, why are we doing this? We've got to make sure, and so I know our curriculum team, Tiffany and Kelly and their team have been working to make those shifts. Like when we learned that we shouldn't be doing release time because we were having substitute issues in this current market, we had to rethink how we were going to continue to do curriculum time. Release time used to be a very easy way to do curricular work during the school year. But we had that awareness like, okay, capacity issues and human resources. So how do we find that time, and how do we just keep this work moving forward so it doesn't become stagnant?
Tony, if I can ask, on that work, like I know I was in the library tonight, those individuals volunteered, even though we compensated.
Yes.
Volunteering to try to keep going. So I know that's a stressor on them. I stopped in and talked to them tonight, but that's the hard part. We have a lot of people that want to get more and more, and we have to sometimes slow them down.
Yes. In any system, you have your explorers, those that are out ahead of the group, and you have your main group that we continue to move forward in a positive way, and we have a lot of those explorers that are constantly coming in and working on our phonics program, looking at our math curriculum, trying to develop units of studies for their colleagues, going back to their grade level and department meetings and talking about what they're doing and helping them implement these new standards. And it's really powerful work that these teachers and Tiffany Owen loves the work she's doing with those people every Thursday when they get together to try to get to that end goal. So we're trying to continue. Where do we head next? We got to keep afloat our current work. It's too important. We're well invested. We have a lot of pride going beyond with this Horseheads curriculum. Everybody's asking, when's my turn? when can we do this? Again, capacity. What can we handle, and what's the priorities in our system? The physical education curriculum has been one we've been talking about a couple of years, and their standards changed a couple of years ago. This is something that, with our new athletic director and director of PE, that we'll look to start working with those chairs and looking at that curriculum and starting the deep dive there. Science curriculum, 6th through living environment. It's very much looking at the vertical alignment from that 6th grade on. The standards make a definite shift in science after 5th grade. This also includes looking at our FOSS and our STEM kits and what does that mean moving forward, and how do we implement living environment. Even discussions about what does living environment look at the middle school, and then offering advanced classes at the middle school in science. World language, foreign language, call it what you will. The world language now they've had some curricular shifts. They're doing amazing work. We had a small group that started to do some very authentic work with our students in the middle school, and it's grown to a great curricular work, and now they're going to do some deep dive into curriculum on the instructional approaches they've been using. Again, we got to continue with the MTSS. It's so important given the social, emotional, the behavioral, and the academics that we all know our students need. We'll work on a K-6 15-1 ELA curriculum and standardizing on what that looks like. Kelly and her team will be working on that in the upcoming year. And of course, on the instructional side, away from more of the curriculum, is obviously the summer learning opportunities. Last year, we weren't afforded much space because of construction to do anything. This summer, working with Mike Coughlin and his team, we're looking at what spaces are available, specifically at the intermediate school, middle school, to provide not just enrichment and intervention periods, and somehow put back some time into the summer to have students come in and not have to worry about as much as the summer slide. The objective to being retaining and keeping them involved in academics and learning, so that there's a natural transition through this from the end of the school year to the beginning of the school year. So look for that in the next month or so. We'll be working on that aspect of instruction. Tom, you wanted to?
Thank you, Tony. So as we continue on where we're going, some of the things that are going on the construction, we already heard about Horseheads 2030, but it's the second part, continuing our build. Horseheads 2030, continuing our build, needs a construction timeline, and what the difficulties about that construction timeline is that we have to try to address 3 elementary schools, and we can't do it all at once. So right now, our construction managers, our architects are trying to develop the best construction plan to also meet the financial needs, and we are hoping to have that roughly finalized right around June, July. We'll bring that back because at that time we should be starting to submit to state education. So as we do that, one of the biggest things right up there, and this is a draft, please, no one says that is final, but we wanted to show you, this is one of the concepts at the middle school. We've addressed the front road. We've addressed the back parking lot. Here, we're looking at revamping the entire parking lot with 2 lanes in so that parents can get all the way over to the left, right? I don't know my right from left. And so that instructional staff can get in to their parking spot. Up at the top, we have 1 outer lane so that kids can be dropped off along the sidewalk, and we have raised safety crossings like you're seeing here at the high school. And we also have a lane that the parents can turn in on the inside of the parking lot as well. And they can basically come along that center median that you can see, and that's a raised sidewalk, drop off their students. There will be guardrails there so that cars can't come across, and they would walk to a crossing in. And notice, they don't go back through the parking lot, they merge out at that point. That way teachers always have their way in and their way out, staff and dropping off have their way in and way out, but also we have over 360 parking spots there. We will have the best middle school sites for anything once the high school opens its facility. But that's our concept. That would be somewhere slated around the summer of 23, I think it is, because we just need state approval. In addition to that, that's where we were talking about the elementary pieces. The elementary piece, you can see, big flats, a lot of it's outside the building. We can probably do that right away once we get approval. Then we go to, I think it's Gardner Road, that's across the back. Doesn't necessarily, but the yellow is inside the building, so we have to strategically do that so that we don't interrupt instruction during especially the winter months. However, the next one, Ridge Road, you can see yellow and blue is dead center of the building. How do you shut that building down so that you can do that while elementary kids are on one side or the other? That's the difficult issue right now, so that's what they're working on. So we just want you to be aware of that. We're hoping to have that worked out. The high school won't start until about 2025. I think it is, correct? Yeah. But that will be one end of the building. It really won't, it will impede instruction by the fact that that one main aisle will be a little cold. But we'll try to do our best. If I know Mike, he'll have the heat in there, but also balance our energy costs. That's a major undertaking. We aren't even designing it yet. That's just rough concept. Now, the district stadium, we have the concept pretty much, we're going through final, so this isn't it. But you can see the stadium piece in the middle drawing, and where the visitor bleachers would be over here, and then the home not visitor bleachers, visitors locker team room, and the home team room, but also the music storage team room, so that we start to train. This is a district stadium. Eventually, we will have a practice field where behind Center Street as well, so that we can access the field from behind and in. We will vet this with everyone to try to give the best option for storage where we are no longer practicing in parking lots. And we can practice at night under the lights, whether it's on one field or the other, but that's a long way. Perfect timing is that on October 8th this year, we will have our first actual field band home show competition. There's going to be a lot of planning for that, so there's been a major investment to bring that here because we travel all over the place and we certainly want to share our resources with our students and our families with everybody else. So that and the middle school parking lot are getting ready to go to state ed probably by, I think it's May, June? I think somewhere around there. So as another place where we are going, budget season starts to prepare for the 22-23 school year. Sort of what Dora said, I think everybody wants it just to be as normal as it can be. I hate to say it, a year ago I sat here and said we will be out of masks roughly by March of this year. I'm not a prognosticator, I was looking at the facts, vaccination, age, and right now the 6 months to 5-year-olds, that deadline was supposed to be December. They've had some concern, they're out of safety, they've held that off. But you can see pretty much right now from either the court cases or the infection rate or what's going on, we have a strong opinion, because I'm on a call, I think Saturday, in with the governor's chamber and a variety of superintendents, talking about what she needs from us to move to mask optional. She's having these meetings. She has been listening. Unfortunately, we always say we're first in the nation in New York. We are not first in the nation with having metrics, and that's one of the concerns. And I think that's a concern for everybody, whether it's a parent, whether it's a teacher, whether it's an administrator, because here's the thing. Once we go mask optional, people need to understand there are going to be people that want to stay in a mask. And that is okay. Just like right now, it's not our choice. We have to enforce it. It doesn't give me great pleasure to do any of that, but I have to do what I'm directed to do. The big thing, though, is when we go mask optional, we also have to represent those students and those parents and those staff members that may have something we don't know about that may choose to stay masked. And we have to represent them the same way, and we hope everybody will have that professionalism and understanding. But if anything tells me the way COVID goes, we know we are going to have to address issues, whether it's student to student, student to teacher, parent to teacher, or teacher the other way around. I think it will be very little of the less, if anything at all. So those are the things that going forward we have to understand. Now, people will say, we're at the end of the tunnel. We don't know, but we've tried to depict it as you've gone through. We're at that very end of the tunnel. We just can't see because it's supposedly bright light. We don't know what the next couple of weeks hold, whether the court cases will be settled, what the governor will do, whether something all of a sudden changes. But we do know this, we're closer than we've ever been. And because of that being close, we go to the next one. We are going to still have to be mindful of safety protocols and the adaptation and adoption of uniquenesses that are yet to be determined. But my staff, my administrative team, my teachers, I believe our Board of Education will do what's in the best interest of all as much as they can within the law or the recommendations that we have the authority over. We've gone through a lot over the past couple of years. We've had It's Learning because we had to get something as we moved to it when we first went in. We have listened and collaborated with all of our constituents. And we are addressing It's Learning as going overseas and saying bye-bye to the United States, that we are looking at a program that was vetted, selected by the constituent group called Canvas. That will be a program that will be going in, and we will have to do training to it as well. Not over one summer. We will have mandated components as a school would for certain pieces in the first year, second year until we can open it up. And as Tony said, you're going to have some people that will want to run with it. They'll help teach us. But we have to make sure we teach our community, our students, that although these people are doing it, this is the mandate or this is the requirement for right now. We will get there. But ultimately, it will be a full learning management plan that everybody has weighed in and said they are very excited about. And we appreciate the HTA's help, the support staff's help, and their parents' help, and the administration as they vet it. Big thing, sort of like what one Mr. Johnson said, renewed focus on curriculum, professional development, and wellness. If we're coming out of this, that's the hard part. But we don't want to push too much, but we do have to have that focus. Because without that focus, we can't improve. We are looking at our class sizes. We are looking at our programs that are either underserved by kids or overserved by kids, whether it's here or whether it's BOCES. But the one thing is if we have a program, we are teaching it and we have the staff to do it, except for a couple key areas. Our hiring processes are very succinct, but we just don't go with a minority pool, and I do not mean minority in a derogatory. When we have so few candidates and it's not hiring season, we are going to get the best candidate we can for Horseheads, not just a candidate. And that has always been the direction of the board, and we are very proud of everybody that earns that right to be a Horseheads teacher. And we acknowledge that it takes a special person to do that. All of our kids, we're doing currently enrollment, either it's here at the high school or middle school, and we are asking everybody, because when we go through this re-envisionment of the district down to 3 elementaries, we've got to conduct a census. We need to know who we have to account for. All of these things will start saying where our staffing needs to be at. We do know that some of our grades are going down significantly, and we need other staffing or resources. We may have to look at, do we offer one thing versus the other because of the number of students we have? And that's always the case in any budget. We will try to do that because we've always tried to say we try to stay as staff strong as possible, but we also have to be physically prudent because we get the gift of our public's time, dedication, and their financial support, as well as the state. Obviously, finance and budgeting, it all comes down to that no matter what, year in, year out. And we've had great support from our community. I have to say, we're looking for the same thing, and we are hoping that even if we have the tax levy that you'll see, the history of our tax rate going down is expected to continue. And we hope people understand that we get, and we've shown this before, we have, of schools our size, one of the 8 best education for like schools. And we do it for almost, I hate to say, because it goes against contrary, for the least expensive amount to get the same results that people are spending a lot more. When you consider us to Corning, they have about $25–30 million more than Horseheads. Their tax rate is a lot more. Do you know what we could do if our tax rate was that? And I'm not saying we do that because it would take years to get to that. It would be an extra $25–30 million a year. I could put that TA in every classroom. I could add that extra support. I'm glad the HTA is partnering and working on how do we solve instructional time issues. How do we solve coverage issues? Always very good partner, but we will continue to do that. But we wish we had those resources. I know if we could, we'd offer it. We just have to be very prudent. So as you go through the budgeting, that tunnel, we are almost there. The next couple weeks are going to be critical. And next year, I'm going to have Bill do my presentation for me because I think I hit everything that you have. And I appreciate that because honestly, their sentiments are my sentiments. We say it all the time, and I'm very proud of our board that we have always tried to honor teachers. Come March, that's one of the things we have to do. Tony has 4 dates. I want to pick one where we do the tour of our educational classrooms throughout the district. We do our construction walk, which we're required to do each year. And at the end of the day, at the high school, middle, intermediate level, and elementary, which will probably be Center Street, we will have sort of like a tea and coffee with an administrative discussion of, you just saw where we've been, where we are, and where we're going, to focus on that talk from our staff. Whether they're a bus driver, whether they're a support staff, whether they're a teacher, whether they're an administrator, because it is important that the board hears that once a year, especially, could be more, but we definitely try to meet that mandate. So ladies and gentlemen, at this time, that concludes our State of the Schools. We are improving. I would always love to say that we are strong. In COVID, I think everybody is just at a point where we exist and we want to get better at existing and get stronger each day. Questions from the board? Did I hit everything? And it's because of the people that are here, the community, that we even have all the opportunities that we do, and I want to thank everybody. So thank you all. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to turn it over. Stay here because we're on to the budget presentation, which is everybody's near and dear topic. I know, that's a bad setup. Mrs. Bizzetti, her staff, and our business office that we took back from BOCES, nothing against BOCES, but I will tell you, I got a bang-up business office. And they are trying to do the best to work out our budget deficit of $6.4 million, which you'll see. But that's a number we usually have, so we want to make sure we work through it. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our first budget presentation for the 22-23 school year. I'm going to give a brief overview of where things stand as we open the budget process. And also, we had to shake up the presentation schedule a little bit, so you'll be hearing from the Transportation Department tonight and the Human Resources Department on their budgets also. So we received the governor's proposal for 22-23, and it was probably one of the most straightforward budgets we've seen for school aid in quite some time. She's proposing $2.07 billion in total school aid, which includes $1.6 billion in foundation aid. The formula this year for schools is simple regarding foundation aid. You either get half of your foundation aid still due based on the formula that they're promising us will be at in a couple years, or 3% increase. State budgets in the past have kind of read as a choose your own adventure story of which of these 8 or 9 buckets you might fall in with foundation aid. So very straightforward this year. There was also a settlement of a legal challenge to the state that now commits the state to their plan of fully funding foundation aid over the next 2 budget cycles, half in 22-23, the other half in 23-24. Frankly, what happens after that is anyone's guess right now, but we at least have an idea of where the next 2 years stand. So for Horseheads, our increase in foundation aid is 3.26%, which is a little over $700,000. Also included in her proposal is to fully fund all expense-driven aids. In the past, we've seen proposals from the former governor to combine all of our expense-driven aids and create a different formula or put caps on them and things like that. None of that this year. The plan is to fully fund. So based on the proposal, as I mentioned, our foundation aid is going to go up around $745,000. That is roughly the same amount we can expect for next year as well. The transportation aid, myself and folks in my office, we're still working on this calculation. It's very complex. There's a lot of moving parts. So I'm just holding that aid at this point based on the governor's proposal. But we always do our own projection based on the expenditures we're anticipating that are aidable for next year. Building aid is going to realize an increase. This is the remaining aid due to the district for the first phase of the 2030 work. So the second half of the middle school aid is going to come on the books, and a full year of aid for the elementary phase 2 bus garage work will come on. So this amount is gets the district all the building aid that we're due for our current building project. So no large leaps in building aid in the near future until we get the next referendum rolling. BOCES aid, we do see a decrease, and this is because in 2021 we made some significant investments in laptops and iPads that were aidable through BOCES. We realized that aid in 21-22, 22-23 puts us back at normal BOCES aid levels. And then other aid items is primarily increased to our excess cost aid, which is aid we get on our special education services. So all told, at this point, an estimated $1.2 million increase in state aid. But like I said, there's still some work to do on a transportation aid figure. Yes? You're there.
First off, I don't think I've really looked at $3.8 million. And what we did is $1 change.
You are correct. Yes, the dollar change is correct. We'll update. Yes, we'll update the slides with the right amount. Yep, thank you. So our tax cap calculation, as we all know, it's limited to 2% or a rate of inflation, whichever is less. The rate we're allowed to use this year is at 2%. The change in the inflation that the 2% is benchmarked again is actually 4.7. So 2% falls well below where the inflation rate is as far as the year-over-year change. Current tax base growth factor is up to 1.0095. This is a factor that's developed based on our district's growth in new properties and improvements to existing properties. And we may exceed the allowable amount by supermajority, which requires 60% approval. So this year's calculation, looking at the 22-23 column, we start with what we levied in the prior year. We apply the growth factor, add back prior year pilots to get an adjusted prior year levy. We apply that 2% growth factor, subtract out any anticipated pilots. There is a capital exclusion element to the formula where we look at our capital expenses versus any aid received in those capital expenses. If the expenses exceed the aid, we're allowed to levy a tax on that. This year, as in the prior year, our aid factors exceed the expenses, so that's a 0 for this year. So as the calculation stands, we're at a 2.97% levy increase, or $1.2 million. Again, far below the rate of inflation. Our state aid isn't keeping up with the rate of inflation. The tax cap is not keeping up with the rate of inflation. And we all know costs are going up across the board. So we'll have future conversations with the board about how we want to approach the levy this year, as we typically do. And I'll begin my work with the county and the various municipalities to do a tax rate projection so the board has that information for their decision. So for this purpose, tax items, which includes the tax levy, any interest and penalties, and pilot items, we hold the levy flat until the board has that discussion of where they want the levy to go. So right now, the only change we're seeing in that line item is the $10,000 in pilots. State aid is as we discussed before. Other revenue includes our interest, admissions, any rental income, donations, stop-loss insurance payments. Most things held pretty flat in those line items with a slight increase in anticipated interest income. So total revenue right now, without consideration for our reserves, debt service fund, or any fund balance, we have an increased revenue of almost $1.3 million. Summary of budgeted expenditures. I just want to preface this saying, this is very early in the process, and myself and my staff have a lot of work to do between now and when we settle the budget in April. So salaries, just to point out a few things, a lot of fine-tuning still left to do in those salaries. I need to do an assessment of the retirements that we have coming up and a breakage calculation on that. We are including, currently at this point, those positions that we hired through the new federal money. Part of the intent was to develop a plan on how to sustain those positions. So at this point, we're building them all in now, seeing what the board's direction is on what we want to do with those positions in the future, and determine which ones, if any, at this point, we want to start planning for in the future. We have our typical contractual increases that we have to take into account. And one of the big items that we're currently working on now, speaking of things that got kind of lost in COVID times, is a trending that's very important through the transportation department of how we account for their salaries and extra hours and extra work that they do. We've kind of lost that trend because we haven't had a lot of normal trips and extra things that we typically do. So we're kind of reinventing the wheel on how we want to calculate our projection for 22-23. So I'm working very closely with Rich and his team to really hone in on that part of the budget. Benefits right now is an increase of $1 million. A few things happening in there. We haven't received our stop-loss renewal insurance premium yet. I think some of you will recall in years past we've been pretty surprised with some high premium renewals, so we've built in a pretty comfortable buffer in anticipation of what may come, so we'll wait until that final renewal rate comes in. And we also have an RFP currently out on the street for our third-party administration for our healthcare plan, so there's an estimate built in for that. That's due early March for review and hopefully approval at the March board meeting. And currently, employee contributions are held flat. We're also working with our healthcare consultant for the premium equivalent rate for 22-23. So once we have that, I can go back through and adjust the employee contributions accordingly. Let's see, BOCE services up $563,000, primarily due to the increase in the CTE program that BOCES offers. There was an increase to Horseheads in the per student allocation, coupled with some additional programs that were added to CTE, which increased the cost, countered by a decreased enrollment, shifted the costs around, and we're realizing an increase of about $1,400 per student that we send to the CTE program. I've been working very closely with the BOCES business office, going through a lot of questions I have about their budget this year, so that will continue to be refined. Let's see, debt service, up $1 million. That is due to the payment we have on our short-term debt for the current referendum. and a minor adjustment for interest expense. This budget does have, as does the prior year budget, the 5 years of bus debt, so we no longer have to add money to the budget to step into the 5-year cycle of bus borrowing. So that cycle is set, and we can just keep rotating the borrowings in and out without any impact to the budget. So overall, right now, total expenditures are increased by about $5.3 million, or 6.16%. As Dr. Douglas mentioned, based on the information presented tonight, we have a gap of $6.5 million, which is fairly in line with where we started this process last year, I believe about 6.3. So we have the typical tools at our disposal. We'll have a discussion on the tax levy decision, any additional state aid. I did get an update, at the 11th hour that our foundation aid was updated based on the February database, and I think there was an extra $30,000 coming our way. So we'll continue to see how state aid fluctuates with the final state budget. Use of reserves and fund balance, we'll have that discussion towards the end of the process, and I will be working diligently from now until April on those budget reductions to maximize the funds that we have. So I'm going to turn it over to Rich Michelada for his maiden voyage of the budget presentation.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, members of the school board, for your time. We've got the transportation management team here with me as well. I have Jason Johnson and Jen Gein, so hopefully we'll be able to answer any questions that you have regarding specifics. If you look at our department overview, we really tried to keep as much possible as flat as possible from year to year. Salaries is one that's primarily driven through contracts and contract numbers. I have a slide on that we'll talk about in a moment. The other item that we weren't able to keep flat, that we are just trying to do an anticipation on, is the fuel line. So the fuel line, if you notice, is we're going up $100,000. It is not our intent to actually have increase in fuel. What our concern is basically inflation, the price of oil, world events. God forbid, should we have a conflict with Russia and Ukraine, that's going to have, if you followed the news, a dramatic impact on fuel oil prices. So that is one that we are anticipating an increase, but that really is kind of our gut guess as what we were looking on that. So overall, we're looking at an 18.5 increase. The one item to kind of talk a little bit about is our capital line is showing flat even, but that number does include our snow scraper, the one that you had approved previously. We've had great success with that. For those that are familiar, that vehicle traffic law requires snow has to be off the top of all vehicles. We've used this at least for 3 storms already. We have some great pictures here, but my point also is that money is still in our equipment line. Our hope is to identify that. In the event that we don't, we're going to give that back, or maybe it'll be taken back, one or the other, by Katie, to be distributed someplace else within the district needs.
Can you go back one slide? Is that I saw that slide and I just wasn't sure if that was another money slide.
The salary positions that we're looking at primarily are due to contractual increases, very much driven by the driver contracts that were negotiated about a year ago. The one thing I will say, and I probably shouldn't, I'm going to knock on wood, we are 100% staffed as a department. If you're aware, statewide, districts are having great difficulties trying to fill their bus driver positions. There's a lot of things going on with the governor's office. Knock on wood, we are right where we want to be right now. So the only minor decline is that we have a dispatcher that's been with us 36 years, and she is retiring, and because of that, there is a little bit of a salary adjustment there for the dispatcher line. The 22-23 bus replacement proposition, what we are recommending to you, if you do accept it, is we'd like to get 7 full-size buses, 1 4-wheel drive vehicle to replace the minivan, for a cost not to exceed $1.4 million. And if we look at the history of that, we are basically consistent with the past couple of years with our bus purchases. There's been some minor adjustments, and that's normally due to the cost of inflation. So that is all the slides that I have, just kind of summarizing the transportation department. Are there any questions from board members that I could answer or my staff can answer at this time? Yes?
I know you've gone to gas-powered buses as opposed to diesel a few years ago. Is that still the trend? To use gas or to go back to diesel?
No, right now our trend is to still stay with the gas. We're doing a little bit of a mixture. That's going to be, I think, a future conversation, because there will be some infrastructure discussions someplace down the road, because we have 4 pumps, 3 of them are diesel, 1 is gas. So if we continue with that trend, we're going to have to look at that and have that infrastructure conversation. Yes, sir.
Do you foresee any difficulty in acquiring the 7 buses, you know, with all the supply chain issues and slowness in product fulfillment? Are buses, you know, available, or do you see an issue there?
There will be some delays. I don't know if Jason wants to mention it. The present buses that we have purchased from the proposition last year are looking at, what, about a 3-month, 4-month delay? More than that? Almost 2-month delay. We are anticipating a short delay. We're not looking at anything drastic just yet.
Okay.
Again, I hate to tell this, but a lot of buses don't have those intricate circuit parts and circuit boards like you get in modern day cars.
The big thing to notice is that even if there's a delay, once they're under contract and they're purchased, the price is set. We're just waiting, and we at least have a bus fleet that can weather that sort of delay. A lot of schools may not have that opportunity. One of the additional things to also realize is that the state is looking at trying to transfer the entire fleet of all buses in New York State by 2027 to 2032, 33 entirely electric. We've got to be very mindful of that, because they can have pie in the sky. We need to keep our purchasing plan, because they aren't saying who's going to pay for it. And I can't just buy 88 vehicles in a 5-year period for any cost. We have been told that if this goes forward, the state will be coming up with remuneration for it. It might be, you may have to borrow, and then they give you the funds once you show you borrow. Just something to keep on their horizon, because that's the talk of the town for energy consumption and environmental friendliness of our bus lines.
Any other questions I can answer for anyone?
Are there any new features in the school buses this year, safety features or anything that are included in our purchases?
That I can turn over to Jason. We're going with all lap seat belts in our buses. The state hasn't mandated that yet, but we're anticipating that down the road, so all the children will be able to have the 3-point belts on there inside the buses. There are some mechanical items. Jason, you want to jump in here real quick?
Can you also talk about GPS, iPad?
Yeah. Okay.
Warren, so basically right now the major changes on the school buses itself is advancement in braking technology. So we have kind of stepped ahead of a lot of the districts in the state. We've kind of paid a little bit more on the bus side, but we've gotten better braking technology. We have yaw sensors on all of our new buses the past 2 years now that will limit the speed going around the corner if it notices a sudden slide on one wheel. We have a lot of different technologies that are coming out on the front end. In the next couple of years, they're going to be coming out to where they will actually have the sensors on the front, to where when you get up close to a vehicle, it will put an alarm on to let the driver know something's going on. Or there's a lot of technologies they're trying to implement on the buses. They're doing on the big truck side and the car side, just like in your new cars where you have turn signal. When you put it on, there's another car coming up that might alarm you. Those things like that will be interactive with the buses in the next 3 to 4 years.
Thank you.
The other thing just to mention with that was Tyler Technologies and our tablet system that we're presently in the process of working on now. So hopefully at the beginning of the next school year, the drivers will be having tablets that will bring on board that not only have route information and child information, but it'll also give us GPS opportunity that the buses can be tracked throughout their whole route. Ultimately, this will be tied into a parent app. So, if my child rides bus 450, did I miss the bus? Did the bus come and go? Did my child? And they can actually get on and track their bus number. And ultimately, when we have the fobs to track the children, they can actually look to see, did my child get on the bus? Did he not get on the bus? Hopefully that's something that throughout the course of the next school year we'll be implementing. We're looking at aggressively working on it this summer to try to have the tablets in place by September of the school year. Anything else? Yes?
No, I have a question. I just want to say that for the new guy, you had to be the first budget presentation. Put him to the test. Definitely true to short straw.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
If I had a challenge next year, bring your mirror and do it.
Do it backwards? Yeah. All right, well then that concludes transportation, and now I'll turn it over to...
Hello everyone, I have a relatively short and speedy update on the Human Resources Department budget for next year. You can see from the slide there, the major portion of the budget for the Human Resources Department is salaries. We do have 5 employees in the department, the director, two clerical staff, and then 2 employee benefit specialists. The increase to 354 from 351 is relatively modest because we did have a staff retirement last year. Equipment and supplies is 2250, remaining unchanged from 2122. Contractual is also remaining unchanged at 68,587. The majority of that 68,587 comes from our Affordable Care Act consultant, Paragon. Paragon helps us determine the affordability standard for our health insurance that we offer, and they also generate the 1095C tax forms that I hear they're in the mail later this week. We are exploring ways to bring that Affordable Care Act compliance work in-house, and my employee benefit specialists are working with that together with BOCES to see if there's things we can do, if we can do this in-house. But we are keeping that number in there for now moving forward. We'll carry it until we do have final determination about whether we are able to do that in-house. Also in the contractual line is our EAP service, Employee Assistance Program. We contract with Clinical Associates of the Southern Tier, and their contract has remained at a steady amount of $25 per employee, and it's a very valuable service and it gets a lot of use. Professional fees and contract items, that $18,000 remains unchanged. That encompasses dues paid as part of contracts, such as professional organizations such as SANES for the administrators, MASLA, which is Management Advocates for School Labor Affairs, ASBO for school business officials, and also there is a bit in that line for course reimbursement for TAs who are working to get their certification. Conference line, that remains at 10,140, and that is money that's set aside per contracts for professional development. BOCES is an increase of $40,000 from last year. Within that BOCES line, there is the Health and Safety COSER, the Substitute Coordination COSER. Substitute Coordination, that is a program that automatically helps fill substitute vacancies on a day-to-day basis in the school. Our Monroe 2 Cross COSER with Recruit Font, which we use for hiring purposes, is we receive applications through that for all of our educational staffing needs, and also drug and alcohol testing. The bulk of that increase does seem to come from the health and safety COSER, which was increased by $30,000 over last year. That is because we moved from a 3-day service of our health and safety specialist, Tony Stager, to 5 days a week. So that is the reason for the increase there, bringing us to a total of $672,238. Any questions?
You mentioned the EAP, and that stayed relatively flat. I think you said over a couple of years maybe, but it's widely used. And I'm just thinking about some of the comments earlier in the meeting about, you know, the stress that staff members have experienced and teachers have experienced. And I'm wondering, I know we're, you know, early in the budget cycle, but do you feel that that's an area where if we had the funds to do it, we should try to expand that benefit? I mean, does it get exhausted in a way that if we were able to fund it at a slightly higher amount, it would be a greater benefit?
Honestly, I think there's room for even to use it more. Right now, so within our contract, there are training opportunities. The staff from Clinical Associates of the Southern Tier offer up training opportunities. They'll come into a staff meeting and give a topic about a variety of wellness topics. They've got a whole catalog of trainings that they've done. They've been used from time to time, but I think time has been short, so we haven't done as many trainings in the district as the as the contract actually would allow for. So we do have room for growth within our contract. One of the intermediate school just recently asked me if there was still trainings available, so I think as into the spring, as things get a little more normal, a little less of the COVID management situations, the supervisors might be reaching out and getting back into the swing of inviting these kind of staff into their meetings. Okay. So I'm hopeful that they're there. But there is room within the contract for more service.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you.
So the upcoming budget workshop meetings, we have 3 in March, 1 mid-April if the board so chooses, and with adoption by the board on April 20th. Any questions?
Work in progress. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, on to item 7. We had audit committee report.
We had a meeting earlier this week, and Julie Kephart, who is our internal auditor, went over the latest report. It was just a draft update at this point, and we'll get the final version probably within a couple months or so for the full board to see. Then Katie spent some time giving us a quick update on the external audit correction action plan that went to the state, and they had made a minor request to change the format, which we're going to approve tonight. It was basically just changing the date of implementation. So we had submitted a report before. Really nothing has materially changed. It was just needed to put in a different format, which they didn't tell us until after we submitted the first report, which seemed a bit odd, but that's what we had to do. So we'll approve it tonight in the finance section.
Thank you. And there was no policy committee because we had a snow day. Moving.
That was the rain day.
That was the rain day? Well, it was a day off.
Oh, I hated that.
All right, next we have our finance items for action. We have 8.02 through 8.17. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Any comments or questions on any of these from 8.02 to 8.17? Warren?
So on 8.09, on the BOCES charges, it indicates that there's a new cost methodology. And last year, when we approved this, there was a new cost methodology also. So my first question is, are these changes in the cost methodologies driven by component districts that are saying they need something, or are they driven by the BOCES board as a way to generate more money for BOCES? And then my second question, I guess, tied with that, with these changes in the cost methodologies, will it cost us more for BOCES services? And how much more, I guess?
So I can start.
Please.
So regarding the first two, 512 and 536, I actually had a call with the BOCES business office this afternoon to talk about this very topic. So 512 and 536 are two coasters that are linked together by SED. They're two coasters that if you're in one, you got to be in both. That's a state thing. The cost that we're paying into these services has not changed. So 512 is where we buy instructional software, instructional hardware, laptops, iPads, things like that. 512 used to house our instructional techs, 2.1 FTE of instructional techs. They've now moved the instructional tech FTE portion to the model school's 536. And by doing so, there are other opportunities for aid if we take advantage of the other components of the 536 coaster, as far as substitutes and different stipends and things like that, that we've actually brought in-house a couple years ago, I believe, Tony. Yes. So as far as cost between 512 and 536, no, we're still getting the same level of service. We're still getting the same software, the same hardware. The hardware portion, we have discretion on how much money we want to put towards it based on the needs we want to buy each year. Just more opportunities for aid, moving some of the cost to the 536 portion of the marriage of the coasters. Computer services 605, I've had several conversations with BOCES to understand the shift in this model. The coaster 605 has, gosh, I don't know, like 32, thank you. I was going to say 20 to 30 different coasters within the 605 bucket for various technology, computer services, network supports, emails, phones, you name it. Our land tax were part of this. They were one of the coasters. They've now gone away from the FTE model of we purchase whatever, it's 1.8 FTE of our land tax. They've now bundled everything into one per device cost. So the cost of our tech supports, the cost of the BOCES computer services folks, all the behind-the-scenes costs that go into maintaining the network have all been pooled and put into a per-device cost that I think it's $152.50 per device we have here in the district. Right now on the books for devices that they count towards this cost, laptops, iPads, things of this nature, I think $3,300. It doesn't take into account the service of our Promethean boards and things of that nature. So from when I'm being told the shift to this model going to a per user versus the FTE, it eliminates the cap on the aid that we got on people. And by lumping it all in as a service contract, it opens up more opportunities for receiving aid. I'm still working through with the Director of Computer Services with BOCES and his team to really understand the shift in the combining of the various buckets. But what we're being told it's an easier way to manage the COSER and opens up more opportunities for aid. So I'm still working through the cost and what it means for the district. There was an increase, but again, still working through it and understanding what this means. And as far as how these changes come about, maybe Dr. Douglas could speak. I don't know, but...
Oh, sure. You know how business offices or districts go through change in leadership? I think that's one of the things that's going on at BOCES right now. Several superintendents have already had the conversation about, you know, maybe this wholesale change right now should have been started after we got through the budget season, but it's already too late. They started to shift. The cost methodology, for the most part, is the same. As you can see, it's mostly in computers. And guess what? We have a brand new director of computer technology at BOCES who I actually know from my earlier career. He's very talented. Whoa. I guess the speaker finally started working. And honestly, he's really putting in some of the platforms that he used in his other BOCES in Broome, Tioga. Eventually it will work out. The newness, the differences in how we've always been told with their former business director that's no longer there and now their person who's handling the budget, I think we're going through some growing pains, and that's why we can't be specific on the numbers yet, but we expect those numbers to be clear and every year going forward to be clearer than they have been now. Does that help, Warren?
Well, I understand we have to approve it or we don't get BOCES, but I'm sort of hearing, I don't know if the costs are going up and you're still exploring
what
it means to, or a better way, you're still exploring what all this means to the district. So I'm kind of voting on a pig and a poke, and I don't really enjoy doing that type of thing.
I will tell you, none of the superintendents feel that way as well, but we're being reassured by the district superintendent, Ms. Hulk, that these things are to get better as well. If a board can say, no, we're not approving it, does not mean that BOCES cost methodology does not go into place. It's if the majority of the boards, I believe, do not approve it, that they couldn't.
I think have to say yes.
Right.
So the increase I'm currently seeing now in 605 is not out of the norm from what we've seen in prior years for the service. It's just more of understanding how the various pieces play together now.
Versus the old.
Versus the old way. Do we still have the flexibility to add and change services like we have in the past, or now that it's all lumped in this bucket, you know, are we in for the cost whether we participate in a specific component or not?
And it's sort of like Katie is in her discussion had the conversation where it was said, well, don't worry about it, we'll work it out. I brought that up at our last chief school officers meeting saying we need specificity, not just work it out, because it's very hard going forward if all of a sudden, oh, we work it out, but now you're unwilling to work it out. That's why the specificity. My gut is they're moving a little too fast for the time of the year, but they can't help it because they're also trying to get us the best aid possibility too. Okay. Is that fair?
Okay. Any other comments or questions on any of the items?
I had one other, if nobody else does.
No, go ahead.
On the Hunt contract, I just want an explanation. If I do my math correctly, I took 7% of the 3.8 million, came up with a number, 7% of the 3.2 million, and that equals the 226. So do you normally take 7% of the lower, the higher? I mean, in reading that paragraph, I had a sense they were offering us a deal, so is that the deal? They took the lower number, or did I misread the words?
Yep, so our fee with Hunt will be 7% of 3.8 project. There was hopes that once we got to bid day and maybe the market had settled down, which did not happen, that we would realize savings come bid day and their fee would be adjusted. That did not happen, so we are going to continue to along the path of basing their fee on the 3.8.
And just so that I can add, Warren, like I updated the board, that the bids, we were fortunate enough, they did come in a little over, but we have the ability to adjust that without asking for anything more from federal funds. Officially, an architect could do it on the absolute cost of $4.2 million. We've already had a discussion, and they've agreed that it will only be on the 3.8, not the additional construction work.
Okay. All right.
Doug?
As a BOCES employee, I'm going to abstain on 8.09, the BOCES cost methodology.
Was it just 8.09, Doug?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Kevin?
As a County of Chemung employee, I'll be abstaining on 8.14.
Okay.
Oh.
Any other comments or questions? All right, all those in favor of 8.02 through 8.17, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay. And our abstentions, we have Doug on 8.09 and Kevin on 8.14. Any other abstentions? Okay, thank you. Our personnel items for action, 9.02 through 9.03. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments or questions?
I'm waiting for Mr. Johnson's question.
No, I think you already know what I'm going to ask, and so I think your silence means that you've achieved that goal once again.
I would say we have worked with the parameters that the board has given us on behalf of the community and in conjunction with our clerical association, and we've reached what we believe is a very mutual and fair understanding, which they ratified last night, that also meets the goal of trying to make sure that we are competitive in the marketplace in those job titles.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions or comments? All those in favor of 9.02 to 9.03, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Okay, our miscellaneous.
Would you like me to?
Yeah, go ahead. I'll let you do it.
I'd like to, as you've just approved the HR agenda, I want to thank you. As if you could direct over to our left side, if Emily, you could stand up. This is Miss Emily Hatch. She will be joining my office as our executive assistant and the board clerk going forward. Emily is joining us from the Elmira City School District, of which she is a, I believe, 9th grade English teacher. We will be working out a separation, which will probably be around March 21st or sooner if our counterpart for Ms. DeFilippo is feeling generous. But I know they are having some staffing challenges, so we certainly understand. But Emily will be joining us short order, and we want to welcome you.
Great. Welcome, Emily.
Welcome.
Dr. Douglas, I would also like to bring to your attention, Emily was a wonderful employee at the Chemung County Youth Bureau, so it's nice to see her in the Horseheads family and in the correct school district where she should be working. So thank you, Emily.
Thank you.
All right, our miscellaneous items for action, we have 10.02 through 10.05. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Any questions or comments?
Just if the board, just because of COVID and everything else, you can see the field trips. Most of them got them in on time. They were a little late here too. We are reminding our coaches 90 days before the trip so that they can raise funds. But depending on requirements and everything, we're hoping that these will go off without a hitch, similar to our cheerleading event, and we're still trying to do everything as normal as possible within our state restrictions.
Okay, all those in favor of 10.02 through 10.05, say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Okay, we have one policy for second reading and action, 11.01.
So moved.
Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any questions or comments on this policy? Warren?
So, I'm sort of in a conundrum, but I'm going to abstain on the policy. I approve of the change where a student teacher is given an opportunity to be a sub, but I don't agree with hiring non-degreed individuals to be subs. I just philosophically am opposed to that. So I'll abstain on the policy, but for all future, as I think I've done in the past, I voted no on all non-degreed candidates. I don't know the individuals when I'm voting. I have no idea who it is. It's just a philosophical belief that you should be degreed, and that's what I'm basing my decision on. So I'll continue that no vote in the future, even though I know the policy will pass tonight.
Marianne?
Ditto, Mr. Conklin. Save time. As many times I have voted no on candidates that were non-degreed. I did not know them personally. I did not identify them as they were sitting here. It was a matter of my own philosophy, which agrees with Mr. Conklin, that we should not have people in our classrooms who are not degreed.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, all those in favor of 11.01, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. And abstentions?
5-2.
You have two abstentions, Mary
The
Ann
vote,
Warren.
5-2.
Okay. We do not have any first reading policies because we do not have a policy meeting. So I'll move on to our board member comments. If anybody has a comment, feel free to share. Warren?
First of all, I'd just like to share that as a board, we received a letter from a community member commending our JV basketball team on a road trip on their own as they were waiting for the varsity, I guess, to shower and things after the game. They cleaned up the gym at Johnson City without being asked by anybody. They just did it on their own, and a community member sent us a letter just indicating the thoughtfulness. And then secondly, I got a new phone this week, which is nobody's business really, but to get school district email, that is a huge issue for me, and I just want to thank the IT department for spending time and getting school district communications to me. I really appreciate their time and effort.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Warren, I got to ask, are you ever interested in an Apple Watch?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
Any other comments? Dan, did you have a comment? Dan? No. Oh, okay. Tom?
The only two things, just to make sure. Tony, you had the 4 dates for board tours. If you could check your calendars right now. I will have to check with Tom Casey and Sheila Javed.
Yes, so these are all dates that are in March. Friday, March 4th. Let me get back from the winter recess here. So Friday, March 4th. The next one are the 2 Wednesdays in a row. The 16th of March and the 23rd of March. And lastly, the 24th, Thursday of March.
So, who is not available on March 4th of the people that are here right now? 3, 4, 5. Okay, March 4th is out. Who is not available on March 16th? That's better. There's 3. March 23rd.
You said 17th. 17th, one of them?
No, the 23rd.
Oh.
Ooh.
Wait.
Maybe.
What time would we start this?
It's an all-day event.
I would not be available until 10:30.
And that would be okay. I really want people, especially at the end, because if we have to make up like part of the tour, I just want to get you in and out. So that could be a possibility. Okay.
My issue is similar. I would have.
How about Thursday, the 24th? Ooh. Really? We can never be that lucky.
No, I haven't.
Okay, let me check with the other two. If you could target right now both the 23rd and 24th in your calendar.
Mock interviews is the 24th.
We do have mock interviews that day.
What is it?
The mock interviews at the middle school. I know Mr. Christmas and I, and maybe others participate in that.
Oh, if we can, we'll try to schedule so you can break away during your time too, if you'd like.
I'm just worried about it conflicting with if we do it on the 24th.
Our group will visit there together.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, we'll work that out, and we'll put out if you're in mock interviews, because I have to be there as well, so I think Tony and so forth. But right now, we've got, all I'm doing is just trying to lock in 23rd, 24th, and it looks like we'll try to look at the 23rd potentially, but I still want to talk to real quick Shayla and Tom.
So just so I heard, Mr. Christmas, the 23rd, it was similar to Estelle as far as the later start?
Give me 1 sec.
Sure.
No, the 23rd it would be like, I have a meeting from 8 to 9 that I couldn't miss, but I could be there at 9.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think we can work around those. So at least we have 2 days to start from. So thank you on that. The last thing, because, for the community, we don't like having to always enforce the rules. We also know that there are a lot of debates and trials and tribulations that you can sue here, you can ask for resignations, you can demand things from the board. We certainly understand that. But I have to ask the board, because we've already been advised by our legal counsel there is no legal merit in this, but there could be potential legal litigation costs. That if we do get served, because I imagine we're not changing in 72 hours, because we're still under the guides of New York State, that we may have to notify these individuals that if it goes forward, we will also make a counterclaim for frivolousness. Everything I've always heard from the board is we try to do what's right and fair. Should I at least let our legal counsel know that if we go forward, we are not going to tolerate frivolousness to this community, because this is costing taxpayers money? How does the board feel about that? And I only ask that just because I know I have a couple lawyers here too. But under advice of our counsel, that is our only real defense, because they potentially, if it is determined to be frivolous legal position, would have to bear the cost of our defenses. And if I'm speaking right, I think I am, but if I'm not, please let me know, because the lawyer's your lawyers, not me. Thoughts?
Go ahead, Kevin.
In my opinion, I don't know how any board member can say that they're taking a fiduciary role with the taxpayers and not giving you every opportunity to protect that very asset that we're charged to give.
Doug?
I would support, you know, if I mean, the lawyers really have to look at what's being presented and and what the merits of the defense of a frivolous lawsuit approach would be, and getting attorney's costs. But certainly, if that's a viable option, I would support that.
Yeah, I have the same reaction that, you know, obviously it's going to be ultimately a decision to be made by the advice of our counsel in regard to the case, if it does materialize, so we wouldn't want to kind of prejudge it one way or the other, but if that's an option and it appears to be a viable one, I would consider it to be on the table. I think that's the disincentive that exists to keep people from bringing frivolous suits, and so, you know, everyone has a right to you know, pursue a claim that they think is valid, but if it's frivolous, then we should avail ourselves of whatever opportunities we have to defend ourselves.
Is that the general consensus, so I can at least let the legal know, as well as our insurance company? Because we will have to at least notify them. I just can tell you we've already had some legal review through BOCES. These type of exact claims are coming off of a website and are happening across New York State, and the insurance companies have already weighed in that they're not even going to stand any type of test of time, but they will cost districts potential initial costs when you try to just rule it out of the court's way.
Yeah, I'm supportive.
Okay. We will give our attorneys, as well as our insurance company, the avenue to fully protect the district and seek any potential expenditures that were duly unneeded. Is that fair enough? I want to thank you. You have always been very good. We will be issuing, because of the absolute disruption and not following state guidelines, we will be issuing, as the board said, to the fullest extent, the no trespassing contact orders for the individuals that disrupted the event this evening and did not follow board protocol, direction, or requests. So we want to thank the Horseheads Police Department as well, and they will be serving them once the letters are there. We do apologize for the community for the delay, but unfortunately the business of the district has to move forward. Thank you.
Okay. The only thing I just want to add is we're getting ready to head into winter break, so I just want to wish everybody a safe and happy week off. And for those of you that are traveling, I hope you're going somewhere warm and fun, but be safe, and I hope everybody really enjoys the time off and the ability to kind of recharge before coming back afterwards. So that's all. I'm just jealous that I'm not going anywhere warm. Any other comments? All right. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This concludes the regular Board of Education meeting on February 17th, 2022. Our next meeting is a budgetary meeting, I believe, in the first week of March. And then our regular board meeting will be again on March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. But if you want to wear green or a little leprechaun hat, we would appreciate it for the video picture.